there are people who think that all human characteristics can be explained by evolution.
Bring it. You ain't got it. I win.
This is scientifically invalid. I hold to evolution, but I know that that is not true. You can't explain human characteristics because, they come up with all kinds of things. People are good because cooperation makes you stronger. So the people who cooperated was selected for by evolution. None of that is true. It's not scientifically accurate.
But science can account for everything.
And I'll just give you one example that I'm about to write up. Why do girls prefer pink and boys prefer blue? Well, this is called evolutionary psychology. They have reasons for everything that is a human characteristic. So some people came up with the idea, well, girls prefer pink because they didn't go hunting. They used to gather berries, and most berries are reddish and pinkish and that color. So they had to be able to recognize the berries, so they really like red. Sounds right? It sounds okay. Makes sense, right? You talked about making sense. It's completely false for so many reasons. The main reason that all these evolutionary psychology things are not true is because evolution involves genetic change. So if there was any reason that people have certain characteristics, it's almost always because of cultural evolution, which is not the scientific biological version of evolution.
Right.
Okay, so it's not that there's some gene that was mutated in women so that they like red or pink. That's impossible. That couldn't have been true. So, maybe it's cultural evolution. Well, that operates through totally different principles, not all of which are scientific. But there's something even worse about that explanation, which is that the whole premise is not true. Girls don't prefer pink to blue. They may now in America, but 100 years ago, pink was considered a masculine color. I didn't know that, but I found out.
I didn't know that either.
No, blue was for girls. Pink was you wore a pink shirt if you were a real tough guy. And in China, red is still a masculine culture, even today. So the whole, even the premise is false. People don't even, this is what I call, fake science. You hear about fake news. There's a lot of fake science going on around there. And that's the only way you can support scientism, is by just making up these stories. And you maybe even publish a paper. There was a paper on this pink story that was published in a journal. Doesn't make it true. It's nonsense.
I gather a criticism sometimes advanced of evolutionary psychology is that it tends to be overly reductive. In other words, trying to find an adaptive explanation for everything that every personality trait or idea. Do you have any quick response to that? We might talk about it a bit.
Sure.
More detail later.
Now, is it normal that I can't see you, or is there a glitch in the program?
No. It's if you'd like to see me, here I am.
Yeah, I think maybe a bit easier rather than. I am exceptionally good looking, and I love to stare at myself, but it would be nice to be able to look at you.
Sure. That's easily arranged.
So, yes, there is a very long list of detractors of evolutionary psychology. So, for example, some religious folks will hate evolutionary psychology for the same reasons that they hate evolution in general. If you offer a materialist explanation for something that should be divine, well, then you are going against God. All sorts of academics will hate evolutionary psychology because it attacks their fundamental paradigm. So, for example, if you are a social constructivist, which basically means that you believe that everything is due to a social construction. Why do men like this type of women? Well, they learned it from Hollywood images. Why do women like this type of man? Well, they learned it by reading romance novels. Everything is due to a social construction. We're born empty plates, right? Tabula rasa, empty minds. And it's only socialization that makes us who we are. So for all sorts of ideological reasons, people have issues with evolutionary psychology. The problem with all of these, I mean, we could certainly spend a couple of hours dismantling each of these kinds of concerns, but the problem is that there is no alternative to explaining the evolution of the human mind other than evolutionary theory, right? In the same way that evolution is used to explain the behavior, the morphological features of every single species that exists, it doesn't somehow magically escape when it comes to humans, right? Now, some people will be charitable to say, well, I accept evolution if you restrict it to the explanation of why we have opposable thumbs. But I won't accept evolution or evolutionary psychology if it's for something that comes above the neck. The mind somehow comes from some magical forces. It's due to culture, it's due to learning, it's due to socialization. That's it. That's what I call flat earthers of the human mind. In other words, history is not going to look very kindly on these people. Evolutionary psychologists do a very simple thing. They take evolutionary biological principles and they apply them to the study of the human mind. It's not reductionist because, for example, evolutionary psychologists recognize that everything that we are is an interaction between our environment and our genes. So, for example, specific genes are turned on or off because of environmental inputs. So the idea that you are being biologically deterministic if you use an evolutionary principle to explain something is simply advertising that you know nothing about biology. So each of these concerns have been repeatedly dismantled by each new generation of evolutionary psychologists, and yet they keep rising like the eternal phoenix. So it's a bit frustrating because it's almost as if you can never slay the dragon of stupidity permanently.